Welcome to Rome and the Empire 1, 31 BC to 180 AD. This is Melinda Cole Klein. The wars of conquest during the 1st and 2nd century BC created problems for the Romans, and it was starting to show. Some of the most pressing issues were that of political power. The Roman constitution did not meet the needs of Rome's international affairs, and it was inadequate in regulating systems in the provinces. Political reforms were needed, allowing the republic to grow and expand its territorial boundaries. Better provincial administrative systems were needed as well. In other ways, the wealthy and powerful Roman military and political families, known as the patricians, profited from wars while the average soldier spent years away from his family and farm, sometimes having to sell it because it did not produce a surplus income to pay the taxes and support his family. The landless veteran and their families migrated to the cities from the 2nd century looking for work. This led some senators to address veterans' needs, but the Senate favored the wealthy landowners and their objectives to remain in power. The history of the late Republic, this is a time period generally considered between 49 BC forward, is the story of power struggles between Julius Caesar, Pompey, Augustus, Mark Antony, and Cleopatra, until the Battle of Actium in 31 BC. For his success, Octavian, the heir to Julius Caesar's wealth and dignitas, the Senate in 27 BC voted him the name of Emperor Augustus. This honorary title bestowed on Augustus started Rome's tradition in choosing a successor based on heredity until its fall to German invaders in 410 AD and its eventual complete fall by 476 AD. Pax Romana, as stated here in Latin, is remembered in English as the Roman peace, a long period of stability and lack of conflict. During this time, Rome still fought a number of wars against neighboring states and tribes, most notably the Germans and Persians. It was an era of relative tranquility in which Rome endured neither major civil wars such as the perpetual bloodshed of the 1st century BC, nor serious invasions. This period is generally considered to have lasted from 27 BC, when Augustus Caesar declared an end to the great Roman civil wars of the 1st century, until either 180 AD or in 192 AD. It was a time in which Roman commerce thrived, unhampered by pirates or marauding enemy troops. It was not peaceful. Rebellions were frequent but short-lived. For example, British Celtic tribes, remembered as the contact with Queen Boudica and the Iceni Celts in England, had rebelled against harsh Roman rule in 60 AD. It is considered by many that approximately 200,000 people lost their lives following an outstanding win by Queen Boudica's army. After the murder of Julius Caesar in 44 BC, his nephew Augustus became emperor after the political alliance known as the Second Triumvirate with Mark Antony and Lepidus fell apart and Roman rule fell to Augustus in the last stand known as the Battle of Actium in 31 BC. By 27 BC, the Roman Senate approved Octavian's petition to become emperor. This began a 200-year-long peace, as mentioned, called Pax Romana. This was a time of cultural and intellectual achievements for Rome. I'm going to mention a few things here that I would like you to consider. It is said by historians and jurists across time that one of the momentous achievements and legacies to the world was Rome's system of laws. Some feature included the following: to be judged equal under the law, to be able to face those accusing persons in court. In time, Roman laws were written down and named the laws of the 12 tables. Many aspects of this system of justice survive today in law codes around the world. Next, Roman art and architecture blended the styles established by the Greeks with their own Roman traditions. In art, Rome copied many Greek statues, but also produced a more realistic style, especially in regards to the shape of the human body, instead of the idolized forms favored by the Greeks. In architecture, Rome used Greek columns, modified them to be more elaborate as well, and using the arch and the dome quite extensively, something the Greeks did not do. An example of Roman use of arches and domes can be seen in the Pantheon. Engineering. Wherever the Romans went and conquered, one could bet on a Roman road or other marvels such as an aqueduct, harbor, or bridge to follow. While the large buildings abounded, some architectural wonders celebrated the history of the empire for public enjoyment. These included public monuments, theaters, along with a Coliseum. And these structures were built across the empire in Roman cities. As well known, aqueducts carried water across long distances and also served as bridges. Many of these Roman aqueducts function today. As with the Greeks from the time of Alexander, the port city of Alexandria in Egypt remained a center of scholarly and religious learning under the Romans. It would be here that, well, until it was burned down as collateral damage during the political coup between Cleopatra and her twin brother, the ancient library stood. According to ancient texts, this repository held the original writings of Plato and Homer, philosophical works, letters belonging to Aristotle, and others on astronomy, math, and other scientific works. Based on Roman commentaries that might indicate the size of its collection, some sources suggest there were perhaps 500,000 papyrus scrolls. In world history, this was the first national library of any significance. Built in the 3rd century BC, it lasted until burnt down accidentally by Romans, assisting Cleopatra's seizure of the city in 48 BC. During the height of ancient Greek culture, the father of medicine created a school and taught physicians how to observe patients, to theorize their ailment and devise a course of treatment based on the philosophy of the 4 humors. This father of medicine was the Greek physician Hippocrates. His central philosophies argued that physical ailments and the origin of disease were not due to an arbitrary impulse from an angry god. This line of thinking led Hippocrates to support the separation of medicine and religion. He taught his students that the body consisted of 4 humors, which were yellow bile, phlegm, black bile, and blood. Illness resulted from an imbalance in one or more of the humors. This medical philosophy remained the central feature of Western medicine until the 1800s. In time, under the Romans, the mathematical astronomer Claudius Ptolemy argued the earth was the center of the universe, which the Christians adopted this theory in the Bible, only to be confronted by Copernicus a millennia later, as he supported the sun-centered theory we accept today. In 150 AD, Ptolemy published Geographica. By 1500, this geographic reference with cartographic mathematical precisions was republished by 1500 as a cartographic and navigational guide regarding the size of the earth and distances. For its time, it was the most accurate source of geographic information based on astrological and mathematical observations. In medicine, the Greek physician Galen compiled an encyclopedia that became the standard medical text. For medicine, it would be Galen, a Roman of Greek heritage, who would be remembered as, well, basically the father of modern medicine. His experiments, dissection drawings, and scientific theories led to contributions to scientific endeavors we recognize today. The study of the brain, the body, how drugs and medicinal plants interact with the body, in other words, anatomy, neurology, and pharmacology, along with others. For more than 2,000 years, Galen's understanding of the human body has influenced modern medicine and anatomy. Later physicians built on and contributed to his original works or replaced Galen's philosophies with another. One example would be in regards to circulation, with the discovery by William Harvey that the blood circulates through the heart, in which this organ acted as a pump, and this theory was established in 1628. While a public pool might be considered an extravagance in our modern age, as a Roman, wherever one might be, it was understood most Roman cities possessed a bath. A bath, the notion here being an entire building, not a tub in a modern sense of the word, was a necessity for Romans. Not only for the sake of social interaction and for health, but taking of the waters was considered a Roman thing to do. In addition, there were central rooms with weights and a gymnasium for contact sports and workouts. Some baths had reading rooms and even had libraries. Going to a Roman bath took much time in a day to complete. Baths also had refreshments and food available to purchase. A bath was adorned with art on the walls as well. Thus, the baths were pleasant places to be for a while, spending time with friends. This cultural tradition was lost to the West after the fall of the Roman Empire by the 5th century AD. But baths have survived into the modern age as tourist destinations and scholarly inquiry. These expensive and massive building projects typically offered wet steam rooms with hot water, cold baths, and a sauna-like bath experience with a type of dry steam. Men and women were separated but enjoyed the same accommodations. Each bath was served by slaves who handed out towels or offered their labor in regards to pleasing clients or maintaining the functionality of the bath. Caesar Augustus, formerly Octavian prior to 27 BC, preserved the core of the Roman Republic transformed into an empire. Ruling as one man supported with the wisdom of the Senate for more than 40 years. This autocracy became the dividing line between the Republic and the Roman Empire. Thankfully, this time of stability and peace ended a century of civil wars, heralded prosperity, and would bring families and Roman traditions to imperial greatness. An autocracy allowed for one man to lead and enable decisions to be made effectively. While Octavian could step aside for his generals as war enabled them to collect dignitas, in becoming Caesar the ultimate ruler-in-chief, Octavian transformed the role of a seemingly dictator who had the power to be demonstrative to the rule who demanded loyalty but took the position of caretaker of the empire. While Roman armies were still necessary, the Roman rulership style established by this emperor was something new. In time, across the empire, services such as access to water and trade improved, fostering alliance and prosperity. Having gained power by means of great force and masculine strategy, Augustus ruled with great prudence. In exchange for near absolute power, he transformed the office of consul from joint rule driven by honor and dignitas to caregiver and leader supported by the gods. Thus, this became a divine rulership. Augustus created Rome's first permanent army and navy, and stationed the legions along the empire's borders, where they could not meddle in politics. Augustus also reformed Rome's finance and tax systems that channeled the enormous wealth brought in from the empire. This kept the military paid and building projects ongoing, set during a time of territorial expansion, which is always a sign of domestic prosperity. All the while, and because of this, there's more access to land and resources, and an increased tax base. Regarding civil reforms, innovations, and entertainment, Augustus found a ministry of transport that built an extensive network of roads, enabled improved communication, trade, and the conduct of mail. Augustus also founded the world's first fire brigade and created a regular police force for Rome. He channeled the enormous wealth brought in from the empire to keep the army happy with generous payments and keeping the citizens of Rome happy by staging magnificent games. His use of games and special events to celebrate himself and his family cemented his popularity. Claudius Caesar Augustus Germanicus, otherwise known as Nero, was the fifth and last emperor related to the Julius family line. Without too much exaggeration, Nero is widely believed by historians and commentators at the time to have been truly insane. This was seen in his continued actions over his short life. He ruled from the age of 17. This followed a family coup in which his mother had succeeded in convincing her second husband to name her son instead of his own as the next emperor. What I'm going to mention to follow has to do with his reign and the events that hopefully will help you to understand this evil at the top. There were several failures. First of all, there was the Roman fire of 64. Some say that Nero might have played a role in starting it. The vast spending of state funds to build his palace on lands in the center of Rome after fire-damaged buildings had been cleared away. This seems rather suspicious. His general reign of terror included politicians, his family, so-called friends, and his style of convincing his ministers and other advisors who wanted something from him to give up their wives for a one night of sadistic sex. In regards to Nero's theatrical personality, he was cruel and he was arbitrary. He was acting like a tyrant. And he also had a pattern of imposing heavy taxes when he felt like it. For Christians, he's remembered as the emperor who ordered the crucifixion of St. Peter and the beheading of Paul of Tarsus. Nero sexually abused boys, seduced married women, desired sex with his mother over his wife, and of course got it, with whom he ended up kicking his wife to death when she was 8 months pregnant. Shameless, he acted in public as an entertainer, and this was not the right way for an emperor to behave. Lastly, he had his mother killed. She had joint political powers shared with her son, and he detested this, even though they had a sexual relationship. He was deposed by the Senate in 68 AD. He committed suicide, which the sources tell us was aided by a trusted slave. In a positive light, Emperor Hadrian was a good man and a good ruler. He ruled from 117 to 138 AD. After his father had died, his uncle, Emperor Trajan, who was a general from Spain, took on this role of father for Hadrian. After Trajan died, his uncle named Hadrian as his successor. Unlike Nero, who spent his time in Rome, Hadrian spent his time in office securing the borderlands against the Germans, Parthians, and the Celtic tribes in Britannia. Secondly, Hadrian was a patron to the arts. He gave money and he built buildings. Just for 2 examples, back in Rome, he was able to see for himself the completed work of rebuilding the Parthenon, and in Athens, a temple to Zeus was also constructed. He also started an unprecedented trend in masculine dress, the wearing of a beard. It is best remembered for his tours of the provinces, spreading Roman practices wherever he went. This was a good Roman emperor. I also wanted to mention most of us are familiar with Hadrian's Wall. This was built during his reign, which created a northern border of England between England and Scotland in order to keep the peace and regulate commerce. You can visit Hadrian's Wall today, and there's walk paths and inns to stay at. And these warm places to stay are very comforting along the route. Believe me, this is something you would like to accomplish. The Coliseum, built on the site of Nero's personal lake in the center of Rome, is remembered as the largest amphitheater built in the Roman Empire, capable of seating 50,000 spectators, used for gladiatorial combat and historical displays, along with public spectacles. It was designed to which our modern stadiums share important features with the Coliseum structure. The Coliseum was in continuous use until 217 AD, and then it was restored in 238 but the Christians brought an end to the death of humans as sport by that time. Afterwards, the Coliseum was used for various purposes until 524 AD. Other large building projects included the Roman Forum. This structure was central in urban settings in which ancient Rome and its satellite cities developed and conducted forms of trade, business, justice, and from which prostitution, a commercial activity, took place. Another building was the Roman agora, or marketplace, found in all Roman towns across the empire. As the empire expanded far and wide, they built stone buildings to plant their traditions in a physical form that locals could understand. The establishment of public building projects across time and space spread Roman traditions in centralized commerce and judicial practices. Emperors paid for public events. These public spectacles taught the people about battles and conducted events that led to the death for those who disobeyed Roman laws. And these events illustrated the power and heroic traditions enjoyed by Roman citizens. Public spectacles helped to remind Roman citizens across the empire, generation after generation, of the moments of history in which they evolved from a heroic past and belonged to. Meanwhile, it kept law and order, and it performed for the crowds that were hungry to watch entertaining activities. All the while, these events helped to offer to citizens feelings of pride in their nation state. And this, of course, would develop and further deepen feelings of loyalty to the empire. Roman technology is best understood in conjunction with Greek architectural traditions of harnessing water power over vast distances to support large populations. Keep in mind, ancient Athens had about 1 million people at its height during the classical period. Secondly, the Romans used concrete, not just cement. This enabled them to build underwater, and incorporating the arch weight was redistributed to allow for building higher buildings. The ingredients for Roman concrete was made up of a stick mortar mixture consisting of rubble dropped into it. This mortar was made from volcanic ash, water, and burnt chalk or volcanic ash limestone. Romans are best remembered for their public baths, city toilets, fresh water systems, sanitation systems that took away the city waste, and their magnificent architectural feats.